The border markets of Orion's Edge were loud, dirty, and full of trouble. Traders shouted in 10 different languages. The smell of alien spices mixed with the smoke of old engines. People from all across the galaxy came here to sell, buy, or sell. Steele, Callan Voss, a young human engineer, moved through the crowd, wiping grease off his hands. His tool pack hung heavy on his belt. He had just fixed a broken cooling pipe for a merchant ship and was ready to get paid and move on. Callan was not rich, not important, and not looking for anything more than his next job. He liked it that way, simple and quiet. But that day wasn't going to be simple. A sudden tug on his arm made him stop, turned, ready to push away another street seller. But what he saw wasn't normal. A tall, cloaked figure stood in front of him, a woman. Her voice trembled when she spoke. "Please, marry me." Callan blinked. "What?"
Out.
She lowered her hood. Her face was pale and smooth, almost glowing under the sun lamps. Her eyes were large and blue with a strange shimmer, and her skin had a soft porcelain color with a hint of rose. She was clearly not human, but her face showed both strength and pain. "My name is Talajora," she said. "I need your help. I have no credits, no home. If I'm not bonded to a citizen within the next day, I'll be deported, or worse." Callan stepped back a little, confused. Wait, you want to marry me?" "I don't even know you," she nodded, her voice shaking but clear. "It would be a legal bond, nothing more. It's the only way I can stay on this station. I'll be hunted if I go back. I have no one else to ask." He looked around. Few people were watching, some with interest, some with laughter. Callan wasn't sure if this was a trick or if she was serious. "What happened to you?" he asked quietly. Taylor's eyes dropped to the ground. "I was born to a noble house on Viller Prime, but after a war, my family lost everything. Our name is now a curse. I fled with a small transport, hoping to hide, but the galaxy is not kind to those without a flag." Callan had heard of Villor Prime. The Villari were proud, elegant beings, once powerful, now scattered by politics and betrayal. He didn't know much about them, but he could see the pain in her eyes. She wasn't lying. She was tired, alone. Still marriage, even just legal, sounded insane. But Callan wasn't heartless. And something inside him, maybe the part that hated injustice, made a choice. "All right," he said slowly. "Let's talk somewhere quiet. You look like you need food and rest." She hesitated, then nodded once. "Thank you," he led her. Back to his small cargo hauler docked in a lower bay. The ship wasn't much, just enough space for a bunk, a workbench, and a storage bay. But it was safe, and for now, it was home. He gave her a seat, poured a glass of water, and offered some ration bread. She ate slowly, carefully, like someone not used to being shown kindness. He watched her silently for a while. "This isn't something I do," he finally said. "I'm just a mechanic. I don't deal with galactic laws or royal families." "I understand," she replied softly. "I will not stay longer than needed. I only ask for this bond. Then I will find my own way." Callan scratched the back of his neck. "So you're saying this is like a fake marriage? On paper, no romance, no strings." "Yes," she said. But there was something sad behind her eyes when she said it. He sighed. "Okay, Tali, I'll do it. I'll register the bond tomorrow. But only if you tell me one thing." She looked up. "Why me?" She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Because humans are strange. Most species see weakness and walk away. But humans sometimes stop to help, even when they gain nothing." Ellen smiled slightly. "Well, that's one way to describe us." And in that small, quiet ship, hidden in a dusty docking bay, something unexpected began. A bond not just of survival, but of two strangers from different worlds. Now tied together by chance, neither of them knew it yet. But this was only the beginning. The next morning, Callan woke up to the soft hum of his ship's systems. He stretched, rubbed his eyes, and looked across the small cabin. Talajura was already awake, sitting quietly near the window panel, her hands resting on her lap. The first rays of station light filtered through, touching her pale skin with a soft glow. She looked calm, but her eyes were distant, filled with thoughts, memories, and maybe regrets. Callan stood and walked over to the food unit. "Want some tea?" he asked. She turned to him, nodding politely. "Yes, thank you." He handed her a warm cup and sat across from her. "We'll need to head to the registry office soon," he said. "They'll ask some questions." "It's nothing too difficult, I understand," Tali replied. "I will follow your lead." Callan noticed again how she spoke clear, careful, and formal. She carried herself like someone used to rules and respect, even now with no title, no riches. There was dignity in her silence. After finishing their tea, they walked through the long corridors of Orion's Edge Station. The registry building was on level 4, a clean, white-paneled office surrounded by dull metal walls and security drones. It didn't look like a place for love stories. It looked like a machine that stamped names into law. A short alien officer, shaped like a large beetle with blinking eyes, greeted them without much interest. State purpose? It buzzed. Bond. Registration, Callan said. Temporary or permanent? Temporary, Tali answered. Her voice was steady. The officer scanned their IDs and motioned them into a booth. Answer the following. Do both parties agree to this union? Yes, they said together. Is either party under threat or force? No. Is this for immigration, protection, or trade rights? Callan hesitated. Tali answered calmly. Protection. The officer nodded and entered the details into its system. A few more questions followed, then a digital document appeared on the screen. Sign here, it said. Callan pressed his thumb. Tali did the same. Marriage bond is now active, the officer said flatly. Expires in 12 months, unless renewed. And just like that, they were legally married. As they stepped out of the building, Callan let out a long breath that was easier than I thought. Tali gave a small smile. For you, maybe. He didn't say much on the way back. There was an awkward silence between them, not heavy but unfamiliar. Now they were bonded by law, yet still strangers in every other way. Back on the ship, Callan sat down at the workbench, checking a half-finished plasma coil. Hey. Tali stood quietly nearby. You can rest now, he told her. You're safe here. Owe you more than I can repay, she said. You don't owe me anything, but I want to help, she insisted. I can't just stay here doing nothing. I know how to work with encryption systems. I can repair navigation drives. I can speak 7 languages. Let me earn my place here. Callan looked up, surprised. You can do all that? She nodded. My family trained me for diplomatic work. But when we lost everything, I learned how to survive. I've worked on trade ships before, under fake names, he smiled. All right then, you're hired. Just don't mess with my engine settings. Tali sat beside him and watched as he carefully welded a circuit. Why did you agree to help me? She asked suddenly. Really? Callan thought for a moment. Because you were brave enough to ask. Most people would rather die than beg for help. You stood in the middle of a market and asked a stranger to marry you. That takes guts. She looked down, quiet, and Callan added, I've seen enough pain in the galaxy. If I can stop just one person from being sent back to something worse, maybe it's worth it. That night, they shared a simple meal. They talked more about their pasts, about places they had visited. Tali spoke of Villar Prime's floating cities and gardens filled with crystal trees. Callan told her about Earth's wide oceans and the junkyard moons where he learned to fix broken machines for the first time. They laughed. Later, Callan prepared the second bunk and offered it to Tali. It's not royal, but it's clean. She touched the blanket gently. It's more than I had yesterday. Thank you. As the ship lights dimmed, they both lay quietly in separate bunks. Outside, the stars moved slowly. Ships came and went, but inside the small cargo hauler, 2 lives had just taken a strange turn. They were not in love. They were not partners in the usual sense, but they had chosen trust over fear and, in the cold, uncaring galaxy. That was something rare. The contract had been signed, but their real journey was just beginning. 3 days had passed since the Marriage contract was signed. Callan and Tolly had started to settle into a quiet rhythm aboard the ship. The cargo hauler, the Nova Finch, became their shared space, small, dusty, but peaceful. Tolly helped with communication systems, organizing files and fixing weak data relays. Callan taught her how to repair human tools and even showed her how to fly the ship in low-drift mode, though their bond had started as a contract. Something more honest was growing between them. Respect. But peace never lasted long on Orion's edge. It started with a knock on the ship's exterior hull. Sharp, measured, not loud, but firm. Callan paused his work. Tolly, sitting by the console, stiffened. "Are you expecting anyone?" she asked. "No," Callan said slowly. "Are you?" She stood up, her face serious. "They found me." Callan grabbed a wrench, not a weapon, but the best he had. He tapped the wall panel to open the small viewing screen connected to the external camera. 3 figures stood outside. All wore dull gray coats, their faces hidden under breathing masks. Their eyes, however, glowed red beneath the lenses. Not officials, not friends. "Bounty hunters," Tolly whispered. "From the outer sectors?" Callan's voice dropped. "How do you know?" "I know the mark on their chest. That red symbol, it's the House of Zron. They were hired to bring me back, dead or alive." Callan swore under his breath. "Now, they must have tracked the marriage record. It's public in this zone. They know where I am." A small red light blinked on the door console. The hunters were trying to override the entry lock. "We have to go," Callan said, rushing to the pilot's seat. "Can you fly this thing out of here?" "I can try." The ship's engines hummed to life as Tolly activated the launch protocol. But before the thrusters could fire, something slammed into the side of the ship. "They're jamming our signal," Tolly said. "If we take off now, they'll shoot us down before we reach the outer gate." "Then we fight," Callan said, grabbing his old maintenance drone remote. "You have weapons?" Tolly asked in surprise. "No, but I have drones." It tapped several commands. In the storage bay for small repair drones woke up. Each one had small claws, cutter tools, and flame torches for metalwork. He sent them a new command: defend the ship, drive intruders back. No kill, just drive. Tolly watched the monitor. They were opening the door. The main entrance hissed as sparks flew. The lock broke. The bounty hunters stepped inside, moving like shadows, weapons raised. Suddenly, the drones launched forward, buzzing like angry insects. One cut a weapon cable, another flew into a hunter's mask, blinding him. Sparks lit the room as 2 of the drones sprayed hot steam and laser flashes. The hunters shouted in pain and confusion. Callan grabbed Tali's hand. "Now, while they're distracted." They ran through the upper hatch and slid into a side corridor leading toward the engine bay. "We need to get to the control room," Tolly said. Callan pointed. "That way?" Through the crawl tube. They squeezed through a narrow service passage. Behind them, the sound of footsteps grew louder. "They're recovering," Callan shouted. Tolly stopped suddenly, then turned and pulled out a small device. From her boot, it looked like a crystal shard. "What's that?" Callan asked. "A Vellery signal disruptor," she said. "It will mess with their vision systems, but it only works once." She pressed the shard. A bright pulse of blue light flashed through the corridor. Back in the main hallway, the hunters stumbled and shouted, grabbing their masks. The light had scrambled their HUD systems. Tolly and Callan reached the control room. She jumped into the pilot's seat. "We have one shot." "Engines online," Callan shouted. "Opening emergency gate port," she replied. "Brace for jump." The ship lifted. The main hangar door, still under override, struggled to open fully, but just enough. The Nova Finch shot forward, scraping its wings against the gate, sparks flying. Behind them, one of the bounty hunters tried to shoot, but the drone sliced. His weapon cable again, and then they were gone. Out of the station. Into space, silence filled the cabin as the stars stretched ahead of them. Callan looked at Tolly. "Are you okay?" She nodded, breathing hard. "Yes, but they'll come again." "Then we'll be ready," Callan said. "We're not running forever, the next time we hit back." Tali looked at him, surprised. You don't have to fight my enemies, Callan. Gave her a tired smile. Maybe not. But now they're coming after both of us. So yeah, we fight together. The window, the stars kept moving. Inside the ship, something had changed. They were no longer just a human and an alien under contract. They were partners now. The stars outside moved slowly as the Nova Finch drifted in deep space. After escaping the bounty hunters at Orion's edge, Callan and Tali had kept their distance from large stations. They avoided known systems, changed travel paths often, and stayed silent on all open channels. Inside the ship, the air was quiet but not tense. In fact, something unexpected was happening. They were learning about each other. Tali was sitting at the main console, reading a human history file. She spoke suddenly, her voice calm and curious. I don't understand your planet's wars. Humans fought each other so often. Why? Callan looked up from his toolbox. He was fixing a loose power wire again. Good question. Some fought for land. Some for money. A lot fought because they didn't understand each other. Some just followed orders. Tali looked thoughtful. My people fought too, but our wars were more silent. Political games, betrayals, smiles with knives behind them. He nodded. I think every species has their way of falling apart. Kali gave a small smile, and maybe their way of coming together. Over the next few days, they began sharing more stories. Tali told him about Velar Prime, her lost home. She spoke of crystal towers that touched the clouds, gardens that glowed under twin moons, and schools where children learned music and strategy at the same time. Callan listened with wonder. He had grown up in a scrapyard orbiting Saturn's moon. His world was metal, dust, and broken machines. You really grew up in a junkyard? Tali asked one evening. He chuckled. Yeah. My uncle ran a repair shop on the edge of Titan Station. I learned to fix broken things before I could read. No wonder you handle this ship like it's part of you. Well, he said with a grin. It's the only thing that hasn't broken my heart. Tali looked at him quietly. And now you've let me into it. Callan's smile faded just a little. Maybe he didn't talk about feelings much. But in the small space of the Nova Finch, silence sometimes said more than words. One evening, as the ship floated near a small moon to collect ice for water, Tali joined Callan at the engine room. She wore one of his spare jackets, a bit too big for her, but warm. I want to help more, she said. Teach me your tools. Your way of fixing things? You already help, he replied. I want to learn your world, she said again, this time softer. Callan handed her a scanner. All right, start with this. Find the weak power signals. Tali scanned the panels, carefully marking spots where the energy dropped. She learned quickly, asking questions, repeating his instructions exactly. For hours they worked side by side, wiring, cleaning, tightening bolts. When the work was done, Tali leaned back and stretched. Your world is louder, messier, but it feels more free. Callan looked at her. You ever miss your old life? Lee thought for a moment. I miss the beauty. I miss my sisters. But I don't miss the lies or the silence. Everyone wore masks there, even me. She glanced at him. Here I don't feel like I'm hiding. Callan didn't answer right away. He stood up and walked toward the front window. Tali, what happens when the contract ends? She walked up beside him, the stars reflected in her soft eyes. I don't know, she said. At first I planned to leave, find a place where I could live alone, stay out of sight, and now. She was quiet for a moment, then said, Now I think I want to stay, if you'll let me. He looked at her. Her voice was unsure, but her eyes were honest. I'm not good at big promises, Callan said. But I don't want you to leave either. Outside, space stretched in all directions, cold, dark, and endless. But inside the Nova Finch, there was warmth between two souls from different worlds. That night, they shared a quiet meal again. There was no need for music or bright lights, just soft voices and simple food. Tali spoke about her language. Callan asked her to teach him. She said a word slowly. Jelra, what is that? Mean, he asked. She smiled gently. It means the one who stands beside me when all others walk away. He didn't say anything, but he remembered the word. As they turned off the lights and went to rest, both of them knew something had changed again. Not just partnership, not just survival, something deeper. Not love yet, but maybe something on the way there. Weeks passed, and the Nova Finch continued to move through deep space. Callan and Tali had grown closer with time. They worked together, laughed together, and sometimes sat in silence without needing to speak, but peace was always temporary. One morning, while checking incoming signals, Tali froze. Callan, sitting nearby, noticed her change. What is it, Tali? Didn't answer right away. Her eyes stayed locked on the screen. Then she whispered, my family, they're gone. Callan stood up quickly. What do you mean? She slowly turned the screen toward him. Galactic news. Signal showed a short report. Final members of House Jura declared dead in a violent palace raid. Civil war on Velar Prime continues to worsen. Taylor's hand shook as she pressed her fingers to her lips. I thought at least one of them was still alive. A cousin, a sister, someone. But now, I'm the last. Callan sat beside her. He didn't know what to say at first. He just placed his hand gently over hers. You're not alone, he said softly. She nodded, but tears rolled silently down her cheeks. I was already forgotten. Now I'm truly erased from history. Callan thought carefully before speaking. Then maybe it's time to write your own history. Tali looked at him, confused. What do you mean? You're the last of your bloodline. That makes you important. Even if no one wants to admit it, you still have your name. You still have knowledge that others don't. Tali slowly sat up straighter. Her sorrow didn't disappear, but behind her eyes something started to shift. Strength. There is a hidden place, she said. A palace beneath the ice rings of Velar's third moon. Only my family had access to it. It holds the house archive, records ancient data, everything tied to the real truth of our bloodline. Is it safe to go there? Callan asked. No, but I must. He nodded. Then we go together. They changed course immediately. Using Tali's knowledge and Callan's skill, they flew through forgotten lanes, quiet jump points and blind spots in the communication web. After 4 days, they reached Velar's system. The third moon, Vera, looked peaceful, white and shining. Under soft light, but below the surface was danger. Tali guided them to a narrow opening in the ice, nearly invisible to scanners. The Nova Finch slid through, descending into a long, silent tunnel of frozen rock. At the end was a dark metal gate shaped like a spiral star. She stepped forward and placed her hand against a small crystal embedded in the wall. A low hum echoed. Through the chamber, lights flickered. Then, the gate opened. Inside was a large chamber filled with glowing panels, ancient machines, and long glass tubes filled with blue liquid. In the center stood a round console, shaped like a flower blooming from stone. Tali walked to it, her steps slow and careful. This is the heart of House Jura, she said quietly. All the knowledge, all the secrets. She placed both hands. On the console, the room lit up. A soft female voice spoke in the Velari language. Tali translated for Callan. Identity confirmed. Heir of House Jura. Welcome, Talijura. What do you seek? Tali took a deep breath. Everything. All the truth. The walls around them lit with floating images, maps, names, history. Some of the records showed betrayal, bribes, even lies that had destroyed her family's honor. Showed hope plans. For peace, ancient alliances, technology long lost, Callan stood back, amazed. This is priceless. Tali turned toward him. This is what they feared, the truth. I was never just a broken noble. I am the last light of a buried legacy. Suddenly alarms echoed through the chamber. Callan spun toward the entrance. What now? Tali checked the console. Someone has followed us. A bounty signal just activated. They're coming. Can we fight them here? No, she said. But we don't need to. I just downloaded everything from the archive into a portable drive. This knowledge will help rebuild my people one day. Callan looked at her with pride. "And let's get out of here, Your Highness." Tali smiled for the first time that day. "Don't call me that." They rushed back to the ship just as red lights started flashing in the cave. Second ship had arrived, bounty hunters again. Callan powered the engines. "Hold on, the Nova." Finch blasted out of the tunnel as shots echoed behind them. Ice shattered. Rock fell. But the ship made it out, climbing fast through the thin atmosphere, back in orbit. They stayed low and silent, dodging radar until they jumped to light speed, inside the ship. The danger had passed for now. Tali held the data crystal tightly in. Her hand. "This changes everything," she whispered. "I'm not just surviving anymore. I'm returning." Callan gave her a quiet nod. "You're going to take back your legacy." She looked at him, her eyes stronger than ever before. Not alone. And for the first time in years, she didn't feel like a lost princess or a fallen exile. She felt like a leader, and beside her stood someone who believed in her more than anyone ever had. The stars outside the Nova Finch seemed calmer now, but inside the ship, the atmosphere was tense. Tali sat in the captain's seat, holding the data crystal close. It glowed softly, a tiny light carrying 1,000 years of secrets. She had recovered her family's truth. Now the question was, what to do with it? Callan leaned on the side panel, arms crossed. "So what's next?" "We go to the Galactic Council," Tali said, her voice steady. "This data proves my family was betrayed. It shows we were trying to stop the war, not start it." Callan raised an eyebrow. "And you think they'll just believe you?" "No," she replied. "But they'll listen. They have to." The Galactic Council met on Althor Prime, a giant ring station floating above a gas giant. It was the place where leaders, ambassadors, and rulers from dozens of species gathered to make decisions. Some called it a place of peace. Others called it a place of lies. Tali wore a dark cloak with her family's symbol stitched on the shoulder. Her head was high, her steps confident. She was no longer hiding. Callan walked beside her, quiet but alert. He wasn't a diplomat. He didn't care for speeches. But he was there for her. The council chamber was massive, like a giant circle made of silver and light. 100 eyes turned toward them as they entered. Some recognized Tali. Most whispered her name like a ghost had returned. The head speaker, a tall insectoid named Chairman Varen, spoke first. "Talajura, last known heir of House Jura, you return without invitation." "I return with truth," Tali said boldly. "And with proof that my family was innocent." Stepped forward and placed the crystal into the central archive hub. Blue light filled the room. Images floated in the air files, recordings, voices from the past. They told the story of how House Shura had tried to make peace, how they were framed, and how powerful rivals had turned public opinion against them. The chamber was silent when the recordings ended. Then came the whispers. Some believed her, some didn't. Chairman Varen stood again. "You bring powerful truths, but also risk. If your name rises again, Viller Prime may fall into deeper war. The people are divided. If they see you as a queen, some will follow. Others will fight. I do not seek a crown," Tali said. "Only justice." "Then the council offers this choice," Varen said, his voice clear and sharp. "You may remain in exile, but your name will stay erased. You will live as a common citizen. You may claim your name, return as a royal, and risk everything including the fragile peace we now have." Tali stood still. The chamber watched. Then the chairman added one more thing. "If you return as royalty, you must follow tradition. No titles may be shared with an outsider, especially not a human husband." Callan looked up. "What?" "You may not speak as a queen and as a human's wife," the chairman said coldly. "That is the law." The words hung heavy in the air. Tali turned to Callan. He stood still, quiet, his jaw tight. He spoke gently. "You don't have to choose me." Her eyes widened. "Don't say that. Just saying. If this is your chance to lead your people, don't let me stop you." Tali stepped closer. her voice trembling. You didn't stop me. You saved me. I was nothing when I met you. I was lost. And you gave me reason to fight again. She turned to the council. You want me to choose between legacy and love? She said. You forget I'm Valari. Valari do not turn away from what we believe in. She looked back at Callan. I'd rather be poor and loved than royalty and alone. Callan's eyes softened. He took her hand. She didn't care who was watching. The chamber erupted into arguments, some shouting in protest, others nodding in respect. The council broke into debate. Hours later, in a quiet, private chamber, Tali and Callan sat together. They'll delay the final decision, she said, but the people have already seen the truth. The old stories will spread. Your choice, Callan said. No matter what they say, you're not just some fallen noble. You're more than that now. Tali rested her head on his shoulder. So are you. What, me? He chuckled. I'm just a mechanic. You're the reason I'm still standing, she said softly. That makes you more than anything the council could name. In that quiet moment they didn't need power or approval or crowns. They had already won something greater. Each other. 2 months passed. The story of Talajura spread across the galaxy. Whispers turned into reports. Reports turned into rallies. Videos of her council speech reached millions. Some called her brave. Others called her a traitor to tradition. But to many, she became a symbol of hope, especially to the Valari people, who were tired of war, division, and silence. They had seen enough of noble lies. They wanted something real. Someone real. And Tali was that someone. Callan adjusted the solar intake panel on the Nova Finch, now parked at a quiet rebel port orbiting a Valari colony. It wasn't a fancy place, but it was full of life. Beside the ship, a small camp had formed. Refugees, engineers, farmers, and former soldiers Valari and others gathered under one banner. It's Tylee's banner. They didn't call her queen. They called her Jelra. The one who stood when others walked away. Tali moved through the camp wearing simple clothes. No crown, no royal badge. But wherever she walked, people stood straighter. Smiles returned. Children followed her with wide eyes. She didn't rule from a throne. She led with heart, and by her side always was Callan. One evening after a long day helping rebuild a damaged shelter, Tali and Callan sat by a small fire under the stars. He handed her a warm drink. Long day, she nodded. But a good one. We fixed the water system and connected to more families to the network. He smiled. You're doing it, Tali. You're actually rebuilding your people. She looked at him gently. We're doing it. He raised an eyebrow. Me? I just fixed a power line and burned my hand. She laughed. You gave me more than tools. You gave me courage. Even when everyone else saw a lost exile, you saw something worth saving. Callan looked down for a second, then said quietly, You saved me too, you know? I didn't even realize how alone I was until you stepped into my life. She reached out and took his hand. Do you regret it? Marrying a stranger from a ruined world? He looked at her, eyes soft.
Not for a second.
A few days later, surprise message arrived. A delegation from Velar Prime. 3 high-ranking Valar elders came aboard the Nova Finch, escorted by a peace team. They bowed respectfully to Tali. We have watched your actions from afar, said the eldest one, a woman named Serana Vel. You have united more of our people than we believed possible. You have turned sorrow into strength. Tali stood tall. I only spoke the truth. And you stood beside a human, Serana said. Even when our law said not to, Tali didn't flinch. Love is not something I will apologize for. Elder smiled, and don't, because now the people are calling for change, and we are listening. She placed a small seal into Tali's hands. It shimmered like silver light. This is not a crown, the elder said. It is an invitation. The Council of Velor will vote in one cycle. If they agree, you will become the first democratic ruler in our history, chosen not by blood, but by the people. Tali's eyes widened. And if they say yes? You will be queen, not because you were born to be, but because you became one. When the elders left, Callan found Tally staring at the seal in her hand. You okay? He asked. She nodded slowly. Yes, just thinking about being queen. She looked at him. About being us. He stepped closer. I don't care where we live. A palace. A junkyard. Doesn't matter. Not going anywhere. She smiled. And said softly, then stay. As more than a contract. He paused. You mean for real? She nodded. Callan took her hands, and let me say it the right way this time. He knelt, not because of tradition, but because his heart said, it was time, Talajura. Will you marry me again? Not for documents, not for safety, just for love. Taylor's voice trembled with joy. Yes. 1,000 times. Yes. Later that month, they held a small ceremony. No crowns, no fancy robes, just Callan, Tali, and there. Growing community Valyrian human together, she wore a simple white robe, and he wore his cleanest shirt. They exchanged new vows under the stars. This time, there was no fear, no secrets, and no deadline, only promise. And so the girl who had once stood alone in a crowded market, poor and rejected, had become something no one expected. Not just a queen, not just a survivor, but a bridge between worlds, and the human who gave her a chance. He became something even more rare in the galaxy, a man who loved without condition, and helped change the future with nothing more than kindness, patience, and awe. A beating human heart,